Welcome back to another video. Today I'm exposing the evil conspiracy known as the NHK, and... do you hear that?
Ah! You shot me in the ass!
I think I got him for now. You can never be too cautious when you're exposing such a big conspiracy as this. Today I'm reviewing one of my favorite anime of all time, Welcome to the N.H.K. This is a story which often gets mislabeled as a dark comedy with elements of psychological drama instead of the other way around. It's easy to understand why, as most people aren't equipped to pick up on a character's psychological issues. Instead, we're all familiar with the otaku who are so deep into the fandom that it ruins their life. So it's easy to understand why so many people label this as an anime about
hentai games.
But it's not. Welcome to the N.H.K. follows our protagonist Tatsuhiro Sato, who suffers from agoraphobia. He currently lives in an apartment in Tokyo while his parents give him an allowance to live off of, but they have no idea that he dropped out his freshman year. This story takes place 4 years later, as Sato hasn't had any real human interaction since. Through several events which force him to leave his fortress of solitude and despair, he is reacquainted with his underclassmen and senpai from high school, as well as an angel in disguise who wants to help him out of his hikikomori ways. Over the span of the show, these three characters have an effect on Sato's life, for better or worse. Aside from agoraphobia, Sato is also suffering from depression, which seems to be the case since high school, as we see in this anime. Because of this, and because of his lack of social skills, he's easily persuaded by others, quickly latching onto their interest, or really anything else they want to push on him. He gains severe paranoia from Hitomi and moe obsession from Yamazaki. But who is the real Sato? Well, for starters, he's not an otaku at all. There's a lot of indirect characterization within the first few episodes which lead us to know who he is through the objects in his room and basically what he says. We see that his bookshelf is filled with books. It doesn't look like there's any manga there at all, and then on his wall there's a poster from the late 90s American indie film Buffalo 66, or their copyright equivalent. There is not a drop of otaku paraphernalia in Sato's room until he becomes reacquainted with Yamazaki, and even then it appears as if he is a casual watcher of anime. But for someone with no internet that never leaves the house, you probably will watch everything that's on TV. Anime as well as gardening shows, as we see one time when we know for a fact that he is not a gardener. Sato is also very book smart, as it shows during his first meeting with Misaki that he studied enough of Sigmund Freud's work to be able to decode and analyze dreams off the top of his head. Unfortunately for Sato, these book smarts do not translate well into street smarts, as we see with his inexperience with people as well as the outside world. Everyone who he would call a friend takes advantage of him. There's Yamazaki, who appears to be Sato's best friend. He's a guy who is obsessed with anime, visual novels, and practically anything moe. He takes advantage of Sato's experience with literature in order for him to be able to fulfill his dream. Like Sato, Yamazaki also lacks social skills, but where they differ is that Yamazaki is very outspoken and he's often seen shoving his opinions down everyone's throat. Yamazaki's dream is to become a successful game creator, and this could also be seen as a form of rebellion, as he left his parents and his family on bad terms to come to Tokyo, working part-time, paying for college, his apartment, food, and all of the games and anime that he has. How does he afford all of this working part-time in Tokyo? What does he do for a living? Misaki is a rather enigmatic character, keeping everyone else in the dark as she lies about her history. She's a very positive influence on Sato's life as she tries to help him any way that she can through these counseling sessions, but of course she has her own ulterior motive as well and is actually using him like everybody else. Lastly, there's Hitomi, Sato's old senpai, who is mostly a negative influence on his life, as she is a extremely paranoid person who is delusional and has a drug problem. She has no problem with ruining other people's lives as long as she can feel better in the process. NHK is set within the early 2000s Japan, and aside from it featuring a few copyright-free analog references, it's practically the same. NHK takes a cold hard look at the negative side of the otaku lifestyle, and what I found interesting here was that it mostly focuses on the moe culture and its detrimental effects on anime fans, basically. And there are other references to other anime here, such as Evangelion, but it never shows any of them in a negative light, except for moe, so NHK knows the deal with moe. This story begins with Sato locked away in his apartment expressing his delusional feelings. He believes that he is part of an alien experiment where he is the last person on Earth. This voices his disassociation with society as well as his interest in reading, as his delusion is modeled after Frederick Brown's short story Knock. Here we're introduced to Misaki as Sato receives a visit from her alongside with her grandmother, going door to door passing out pamphlets raising awareness for hikikomori, and of course, because Sato happens to be a hikikomori, he gets really anxious and flips out, causing a big scene. This is very embarrassing for Sato, and it's a catalyst for his introspection, which also causes him to reevaluate his life and go out and try and find a job. Ironically, the only place that he applies to is the same internet manga cafe that Misaki works at. Something I found confusing about Welcome to the NHK my first time around watching this was, why does Sato talk to his furniture and appliances? There is absolutely no context for it whatsoever, and it confuses a lot of people, so it leads them to believe that either A, Sato is batshit crazy, B, he is high as hell, or C, they're watching a story that isn't meant to be taken seriously. As someone who later read the manga and the novel, it shows that he is high and is hallucinating from drug use, so that explains it, but it doesn't explain it at all within the anime, and that is a problem. NHK is adapted from a light novel into a manga and then again into an anime, and you should never expect for the viewers to have already seen and read all of that stuff. You have to give critical details, and that's where they slipped up on. The majority of Sato's delusions and paranoia revolve around the conspiracy he believes to be called the NHK, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a Japanese broadcasting network, a major network actually, and he believes that the H actually stands for hikikomori instead of whatever it actually stands for. He believes that they're showing anime on TV to first turn people into otaku and then turn them into hikikomori, never leaving their house, that way they can use them for their alien experiments. So as Sato is holed up in his apartment, never leaving, he's not quite left to his own thoughts there, as he is bombarded with the opening song of Pururin on repeat for days because of his neighbor, and it seems that Pururin is a very significant anime character within his world. First of all, we have other random anime fans that we see as extras here that are expressing great joy for the character. We also see that Pururin is present on ATM machines as well, so it's safe to say she is a very significant anime character, and it really shows Sato's understanding of anime, as he has no idea who Pururin is. It's basically like someone in our world who watches anime but has no idea of who Naruto is. Eventually, Sato has had enough as he goes next door, kicks in the door, and tells him to turn that shit off, and it turns out to be his former underclassman from high school, Yamazaki, where he gets a crash course in the otaku lifestyle. This story takes an introspective look at many serious issues through the eyes of Sato. After seeing a recluse deal with his own psyche, we see him get introduced to anime, as it shows the detrimental effects of escapism and the moe culture on someone who is basically so impressionable like that. These negative influences drive Sato away from reality into total denial and even pedophilia, as these genres of anime are basically made for people just like him who have lost touch with society. Eventually, Sato is forced to deal with his depression and suicidal feelings, as he is forced out into the real world, even if he's unprepared for it. Now, I am well aware that this is a story by anime fans for anime fans, but I still believe that the direction of the story paints a negative image of the anime fandom. I believe this all comes down to the type of story that NHK tells, which is a cold hard look at the negative side of the otaku lifestyle, as well as showcasing various psychological issues that characters can have. have. NHK features a cast of characters who all suffer from a psychological disorder, and the story revolves around them coping with it and dealing with it. Whether they solve their issues or not, that is the point of the show, and it's not about the characters creating a visual novel. Even though they do work on that, that will be considered subplot. While these characters suffer from various different problems, they all have one thing in common, that they fill the void in their life by using and exploiting Sato. So not only does Welcome to the NHK paint a bleak picture of the anime fandom, but of life in general, so it can be very depressing. Of course, to balance out all of the heavy dramatic moments, we have comedy, which takes the form of dark comedy, which is very appropriate for the scope of the story. This takes the form of irony, as everything that can go bad will go bad, and in the worst way possible. That usually comes off as self-deprecating humor. The dark comedy blends itself in so well with the heavy dramatic moments that depending on your viewpoint when watching NHK, you'll probably come away with a different experience. If you are a depressed and lonely person, you're probably going to relate with Sato. If you're an otaku who feels misunderstood by the world, then you're probably going to relate with Yamazaki. If that's the case, you're going to find some of these ironic dark comedy moments to be actually pretty dramatic, as where on the other hand, if you're just a normal person that likes anime and really can't relate with any of these characters, you're going to find some of the dramatic moments to be comical, just of the way it's all presented. On that note, I find Welcome to the NHK to be a very detailed story, as within its 24 episodes we're introduced to 6 characters who are fully detailed and developed, who also go through all of their own specific internal and external struggles, as well as some form of conclusion. Aside from NHK telling the story of these characters, it's also a commentary on the negative effects of the otaku lifestyle, as well as raising awareness for various psychological issues. Without giving any spoilers, I wanted to briefly talk about the ending. I felt that the ending that we have is very appropriate for the story, and it also creates a complete experience. However, a third of that episode goes back to Sato's hallucinations, as it really takes you out of the moment, and I feel that they really dropped the ball in that moment there, but it is only a third of the episode, and I still feel that the ending is something that's going to leave a lasting impression on anyone who watches it. While I feel that Welcome to the NHK is a very well-constructed story, it tries to do too much from the manga and less of being a depiction of the events within the novel, and because of this, we have an entire arc and a few characters here that really feel out of place, because the majority of their impact on the story happens in events in the manga that were not depicted within the anime, so it feels like it's out of place, and that arc abruptly ends. That is the Mouse Road arc, and I'm sure many people are familiar with it and feel the same way if they've seen the anime. This was created in 2006 by Studio Gonzo, and it shows. Now, while the backgrounds were beautifully articulated, the characters that inhabit them were actually pretty ugly. The still images work, and they're on par for its time, but whenever they move, their bodies will get deformed and misshapen, and it's really ugly. This anime features a beautiful soundtrack that fits the mood and the tone for all of the scenes, as well as featuring one of my favorite closing songs of all time. As far as the voice acting goes, I've watched Welcome to the NHK in its completion with Japanese and also English, and I think they are both good dubs, so you're free to watch it however you like. My final score of Welcome to the NHK is an 8.8 out of 10, and I'd love to bump that up to a 9, but I quit rounding up a while back, and I just can't do that. But my overall enjoyment level of the series is a 10. Welcome to the NHK holds a very special place in my heart, because it was not only one of my favorite anime series of all time, but it's something that I found to be life-changing. So I hope that I was successful in creating a very objective review of this anime for you, and hopefully you can check it out if you haven't yet and enjoy it. Even if you do not have the same experience as me, I know that this is definitely something that you're probably going to enjoy if you haven't seen it yet. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, as well as like, comment, and even share if you like. All of that really helps. So I thank you for all of your support, and I'll see you next time when I review Golden Boy.